Okie dokie. In this video, I'm setting myself a challenge to go into the city in that crunch time just before Christmas of 2023 to see what Thomas & Friends stock can be found in two major retailers that historically have been go-to places to get lots of Thomas & Friends goodness. The first retailer we'll look at is the Myer City store. It's got an amazing level up top there which has a lot of toys and adult collectibles, YouTube, and all sorts of fun things for all ages. Hey, everyone plays with this stuff. We need to look at how other brands are represented because this is very important to once we see the Thomas & Friends stock. So I spend a fair bit of time looking at how other things are laid out, how much is there, is it lots of stuff, is it a little bit of stuff? And it's one of those things where the video does all the talking here. I'm not going to talk about specific brands, but I've noticed over the years certain brands are always very well represented and take up a huge amount of floor space. And I'm pretty sure this style of representation doesn't happen by accident. All this stuff is predetermined and prearranged between retailers and toy companies. It was actually very busy. The day I went into the city was a very hot day, and I didn't try to talk over the video as I did this. I just thought to myself, I'll get the video and I'll do a talk over like I'm doing now on top of what you're seeing. I could see a bit of stock erosion going on with other very popular toys. I find it interesting how some brands love to be very well lit and very well displayed, easy to see, while other brands are up here almost hiding in the moody dark that some areas of this toy department have. The Hot Wheels area was quite dimly lit. I'm not sure whether there were some lights that had failed or Mattel were earning some greenhouse gas carbon credits by dimming down the lights. My crapple iPhone makes this area look a lot brighter than what it really was. It was quite a moody experience looking at the Hot Wheels cars. There was a Hot Wheels collector there lurking in the shadows. I did try to talk to him, but he was one of the ones that are non-verbal. This year they had areas on the floor space that were boxed pavilions within the shopping area, so once you were inside those areas, you couldn't really see what else was out on the floor. It sort of restricted you from seeing, oh, there's that brand over there, yet the other end of this toy department was done in what I'll call the old-styled, old-fashioned way of retailing, where you had islands of stock and you could see curiously what brand was near what other brand. I always find it interesting to see who sits next to who within the toy department. Surely you would pay good money to be near Bluey, but Bluey was in one of those boxed away areas. I've broken my own rule in this video. I've been mentioning brands, but sometimes you got to mention a brand, point out things you see or don't see. I think it's very important to do so. And I had a stark reminder that I'm Australian because I saw an area where you can go and personalise your own jar of Vegemite. So yeah, wouldn't that be a fun thing to get for Christmas? Now, sometimes people say to me I don't speak like an Australian, so I'll stop right now. I'll talk like I normally talk. And what I was worried about was I wasn't seeing the Thomas & Friends area in my face in the way it used to be. In this toy department, there used to be a really good dedicated Thomas & Friends / Fisher Price area. I was struggling to find it. So I started to have to think outside the square. If I'm going to find the Thomas stuff, I had to walk the whole floor. It let me see some brands, without saying something very pink, was represented at both ends of the toy department. As I wander around, I listen very carefully to what children are saying and what they're excited about. I used to do that when I did toy reviews back in the day. And the secret to finding where the Thomas & Friends toys were was think about the worst position to be in this toy department. It was right up the back end of where the toy department is. You had children's clothes. If you went further on, or maybe if you were going to the toilets, you may be able to see the Thomas & Friends toys. I don't need to explain everything that you see on camera here. You know what you're looking at. I was messaged by friends prior to me coming in here. They told me the new Thomas Wooden Railway stock was in this store. I had come here about a week and a half after being told the stock was here. I can only assume there was lots more stock here, or let's just hope it was like that. There was lots more characters here And all there was here, or all I could find, was 2 diesels of the new Thomas Wooden Railway style. There was lots of the new Thomas Wooden Railway track packs at a price. What wasn't here was a lot of the motorised double packs, no 3 packs here of the motorised variant, and the metal engine, or push along as some people call it, they've been very hard to find in certain retailers. It's almost like there must have been a choke of those and they're not coming through, or they've been so popular they've completely sold out. There could be that very positive vibe about the push-alongs. But I'll let the video do all the talking here. It's very important to see how this premium toy train brand is represented in this toy area, which is a premium retailer in Sydney. The way I'll describe where Thomas was, he was pushed right up to the end of the toy department. He was very difficult to find. Well, I found it hard to find. And if you're placed next to the trolls, well, that says a lot about where you are in the toy world. I did purchase 2 diesels and they were 15% off. If there was more characters there, I probably would have picked them up. But remember, it was really important to show you in a fair way the scale of this toy department and how the Thomas & Friends area was shoved right up the back, almost in no person's land. And what was on offer was almost laughable. So I escaped the Myer City store toy zone and I head off to the Queen Victoria building where the amazing Hobbyco Toy and Hobby store resides. Maybe you're getting an inkling of how busy it was in the city. Remember, it was a very, very hot day. And within Hobbyco, the challenge there was to see the Thomas stock that was there without people in front of it. I just had to wait long periods of time to get nice, clean shots of what was there. And I'll tell you what was there was very impressive. It was all lined up in characters. I was just amazed to see Hobbyco has been restocked in a really good way. There was lots of the motorised twin packs there. What wasn't there was the push-along metal engine type Thomas & Friends toys. In single pack, I did see a 3-pack colour changer set there, and that's a fairly common thing to see. It seems to hang around a lot. There was also an 11-pack metal engine AEG themed item there. Maybe you just want the plain stuff without the silly themes wrapped around things, or maybe you want the silly stuff. Unusual not to find a single pack metal engine because this shop used to be the mecca for coming to get some great strange characters in single pack format in the past, years ago, the good old days. And thinking back to the motorised twin packs, it was just so orderly, it would really get the tingles going on some people. And what wasn't here was the motorised 3 packs. Very, very tricky to find those in the lead up to Christmas anywhere. What was amazing was the amount of the new Thomas Wooden Railway stock there. It's the first time I've seen this amount of stock of this new line, which actually isn't new. It's been around for a couple of years, but it's taken so long to be in store in Sydney, Australia. And it's no surprise to me, but the character that I was prepared to buy here isn't here, and that's Thomas, because I've had one stolen from my workshop. I need to replenish that. And what I've noticed is, the few times I've seen this stock, often Thomas is out of stock. The Thomas Wooden Railway stock I saw here seemed to be set at the right price, and I certainly saw other shoppers within store looking at what was on offer here. It was certainly quite eye-catching. I could see in this area the recall notice related to the Thomas Wooden Railway troublesome trucks that have proven to be too troublesome for their worth. And do you take the refund which is on offer, or do you keep these as very highly collectible Thomas & Friends merch? I could see there were track packs here on offer. I could see there was Thomas Wooden Railway sets as well. I think just be very careful which one of those you pick up and buy. But overall, it was a fairly impressive show of Thomas & Friends might in one of the more important toy and hobby shops in Sydney. As you know, I've looked at a lot of Thomas & Friends items over the years. Maybe we'll have a trip back in time into the same store here. You'll see the year date that I've taken the video, and this is a reminder that in basically 6 years, so much change has happened within the Thomas & Friends toy line. It's almost unbelievable. In that short time, some of the Thomas lines have gone through 4 changes. Some of them have gone through 3 changes. And don't forget that flash-in-the-pan version of Thomas & Friends toys called Thomas Adventures, which was actually freaking awesome. The bulk of the change that goes on with these toys is essentially unnecessary. It's a complete and utter joke. And as we saw, the ultimate joke and failure was Thomas Wood. Nobody ever thought that was going to work except for one company. It was just the strangest, most desperate backwards move I've ever seen in retailing. It was just shocking. But on a strange other way to look at this is, if you're a collector, this is the most astonishing thing to collect. There are so many variations of what is essentially the same thing. And of course you end up having your own personal favourites, and I can tell you two straight off the top of my head. One is the original Trackmaster Thomas toys, which were made by Hit Toy Company, and the other one, and you'll be surprised by this, is the Take-Alongs. And why I like the Take-Alongs is there's a very long lineage of similar toys that derive from that design. It's quite amazing. They were initially a very joyful Thomas toy, which were taken out by some very dumb design changes. I'm producing this video in 2023. Thomas All Engines Go is all the rage, so a lot of the things that you're seeing from only a few years ago makes absolutely no sense to what you would be seeing in what is the Thomas program of 2023. And I've got a theory about why we have Thomas All Engines Go, because sometimes when you go to a strange place that is really strange, it always makes you want to go back to where you came from. And I think a classic example of that is what's happened with Thomas Wooden Railway. Maybe you have more to say on that, or agree or disagree with what I just said, but all I know is by this time of the video, there'd only be about 2% of the audience now watching. All I seem to get is a whole stack of comments which relate nothing to the video that I put up on YouTube. Anyway, we will go forward in time back to 2023 right now. Okay, we're back in the present day. I've got some good random video of what's going on in Hobbyco here. Of course, I focused on the trains, and it's always great to go in there, see what's going on, see what's on offer. The display they have in the window is dynamic. It's always changing up, usually, and not changing down. And the younger person who's now in charge and running the train section, and his name sounds like Ewok. Okay, that's the only way I can remember him, by thinking about those little Star Wars guys. It's embarrassing, I can't. He had an unusual name from Dutch heritage. Okay, he is excellent. And we had a long chat, and as we said, you get some very, very knowledgeable trained people come in here who speak almost another language, and to be able to work in this environment, you need to understand that language. Of course, the core of this video was looking at two major retailers in the city of Sydney in that last crunch time, that last week before Christmas of 2023, and just seeing what's up for offer in the Thomas and Friends realm. Of course, we all know we've gone through a fairly dark time, two black swan years, and I'll call that 2020 and 2021, where supply chains were choked, where going to stores was near impossible in some cities, and Sydney was one of those. And we've witnessed a Thomas and Friends franchise which has gone through some really radical changes in direction and design over those last few years. I spoke earlier in the video how over just a couple of years we've had so many different variations of Thomas and Friends toys. Lots of it's been pretty good, but there's also been some absolute trash along the way. When doing some research about this video, I looked at the TOMY Takara website, and I did this more so to take a look at a far more stable Thomas and Friends toy environment. It looks like the Japanese call All Engines Go, GoGo Thomas. The styling that TOMY has done for GoGo Thomas, to me, is far less jarring versus what I see Mattel do with the Thomas All Engines Go motorised trains. The TOMY GoGo Thomas trains seem to be a respectable scale. and looked like they would work with all the bits and bobs if you already owned a lot of TOMY track system and accessories. And I started to dig further to see other things that TOMY were making in the Thomas & Friends range, and for me it was like looking at forbidden fruit. And as history tells, TOMY Thomas had the license for Thomas toys in the early 90s. I dare say the peak sets, the best ones, were between 2003 to 2006, but unfortunately from 2006 they lost the international license, and by 2007 Hit Toy Company started making the Thomas toys, and that's where Trackmaster 1 came from. As I said earlier in the video, it's one of my favourite systems, but the problem is it smothered what was an absolute classic Thomas & Friends system, which is TOMY Thomas. That's actually still around today, but it's only available for the Asian market. I focused on the TOMY Thomas & Friends toys because, well, it's a classic toy, it runs on a classic track system, the play rail system, and you can just see that TOMY seemed to respect the consumer in a very different way versus a company like Mattel. And then I wonder, maybe the Japanese look at what Mattel generate and think, wow, I wish we had that stuff. Although I've never had a Japanese friend ever ask me to send over some Thomas Motorized All Engines Go toys. I think that says it all. I'm hoping I've got some Japanese audience out there who live in Japan and obviously understand English and can relate to what I've just said. And maybe they can say, hey, we really like that Mattel stuff. We want that Mattel stuff in Japan. I would laugh if I heard that. And remember, it's always the forbidden fruit that is the most desirable. And I'm sure some of you out there are thinking, Leah, if you like this stuff so much, just go and buy it. Just bring it in from Japan. But this is the conundrum. To obtain the TOMY glory, I'm up against exchange rates and also what are usually fairly hefty shipping fees. I have brought some of the stuff into Australia, and what would be a very inexpensive toy in Japan becomes a very expensive toy in Australia. And most curiously, as I was stumbling around the TOMY website, I had to keep translating it to English to understand where I was. I came across an adult version of the TOMY trains that's called Play Rail Real Class. From what I could work out stumbling around on Japanese websites and forums, this is a TOMY train system that's aimed at adults. It's got a higher level of detail than your TOMY toy trains in a sense. And it has a track system that is more realistic. So it does connect to the Blue track system, that is the play rail track system, but in a strange way, and I find this to be very curious, it does look quite similar to what I call the Mattel Trackmaster 2-track, or let's call it, if we bring it up to today, like the AEG Motorized track. I did read some forums quickly, and there's a divided community. Some people didn't like it because it's not prototypical. Others liked it because it's filling that strange void between being model and realistic looking, yet when it's running around it's got that funky toy look to it as well. There's a great TOMY demonstration video of this system on YouTube, but stupidly, it's caught up in the YouTube Kids environment. It really needs to be on the adult side to be found because I could only find this video by going through the TOMY website. So from what I can work out, this system has come out in 2023, a bit earlier in the year for me making this video, and it looks like one of these things. Either it's going to gain traction and there'll be more trains added to this, or it will just quietly go away. And I would love something like this to be expanded to cover some of the great transit systems, very famous ones that are seen around the world. I think that'd be a great way to push this into other countries. But hey, I'm just dreaming. I'm not an executive at TOMY Toy Company. I'm just a wally on YouTube stuck in Australia who can't afford to bring the good TOMY Thomas toys in, which is what we all really want.